What's going on, guys? Hope I didn't keep you waiting too long. My son, a little bit of drama with the toddler. Uh, Speaking of drama, the United States has gone completely apeshit insane. This is something that I've been warning about and talking about for years. I am not alone in that. The trajectory of things in the United States has been consistent regardless of the shift from red to blue, red to blue, red to blue, red to blue. The reality is that the truth about the U.S. political system is laid bare. It's all completely out on the table. I think that one of the most effective propaganda pieces, whether it was introduced deliberately or not, in human history, really, is the idea that opinions are somehow valid. I think people have been convinced that when it comes to spirituality and religion, nobody really knows anything, so you just kind of pick something that you can live with and you sort of pretend to believe it. I honestly think that's what most religious people are doing. And the same is true of politics. People kind of think that you just kind of choose something and you sort of play along, and it's really got nothing to do with values or, and it's just kind of this sort of cultural assumption that it's just a matter of opinion. It's not. There is objective truth and objective reality in regards to ethics, in regards to what the best socioeconomic, system is. We have the top 10 countries by the metrics of happiness, education, and healthcare all have the same system. It says no data here. Are you guys getting a feed? I don't know why I always get these messages. Somebody let me know in the chat if everything's working, because I'm getting messages that say otherwise. You know what I mean? Like, the solutions are available. If we wanted to engineer a system that really had as its, modus operandi, as its primary objective, the cultivation of the absolute best possible expression of human potential, that's what we would do. It's not difficult. Actually, for the patrons and people that might be considering becoming a patron, the secret stream that I did today, the patron-only stream, was the beginning of the 16th degree of Freemasonry, and everything that I'm talking about right now is laid out in the first couple of paragraphs so beautifully. All of the answers that people squabble and argue about, all the different isms, schisms, capitalism, communism, socialism, whatever ism, schism game, they're the balance and the obvious truth of all of it is there. It's just an incredible piece of work. So go and check that out. I'm actually thinking that I might even make it public after a week or something and make it just a patron premiere thing, because I almost feel unethical about keeping it, not making it public. It just seems wrong because it's exactly perfect for this moment. In fact, I'm tempted to just pull it up and read it again right now, but I'm not going to. I already did that once today. So in this stream, I can tell you what's happening in the United States. I can tell you how to fix it, if it's permitted. I can tell you why the things are happening, but it doesn't really, it's not that it doesn't matter if I do that. The reality is, in order for people to really understand, for it to mean something to you, what you really have to do is study psychology enough to have like a basic understanding, if you don't already, on both the individual level and like the mob psychology level. You have to study the techniques of propaganda, just a basic framework, and you should use my videos on it for that, because when I made the last video, I think I've made a few, but when I made the last one, I actually did some research on YouTube just to see what other people were saying. And I'm not saying this is conspiracy. I don't know what the reason is, but the really fundamental, the basic mechanism, the most important device of the propaganda machine was not mentioned at all in any of the other videos I could find. Not anywhere. It absolutely blew my mind. I don't know what to think of it. You know, I seriously doubt all those creators are like under government control or something, but it does not make any sense. So, you know, if you're not hip to that, what I'm saying is that you have to understand the stuff for yourself in order to really, for it to have substance for you, you know. People can tell you stuff until they're blue in the face, but you have to prime, you know, your understanding for those things. Yeah, so where should we start with this, you know? I really don't want to tread old ground, and I have talked a lot about how there really aren't two parties in the United States. It's really just one machine. And as I was saying about the psychology and the propaganda, if you really understand these things, you can see it for yourself. You can see what the machinations are all about. You can tell the rhetoric from Blue Puppet, you know, what the function of it is, what the effect they're trying to achieve with it is. You can see the same thing on the red side, and every single bit of it is absolutely congruent with this perception that I'm sharing with you here, you know. Once you understand the system, then you can predict its behavior as well. And that's one of the main reasons I'm so confident that I actually know what I'm talking about here. You know, you guys can check me on this too. Go back all 6 years. Every single thing that I have predicted has happened. I have called their behavior and all of the developments exactly every step of the way. And the only way to predict the behavior of a system is if you understand the system, right? So basically, what is happening here, there's a few tiers. One of the main thing, the biggest concern for me, for my role in all of this as a person, the way that I see it, is that there is a certain level of consciousness that facilitates the exploitation of humanity. And if that sort of status quo isn't maintained, if people transcend that level, the overlord's game is over. And right now, in this moment, we have access to computational power that used to require a PhD. You know, you can do research as an individual now that used to be difficult for people that have access to institutions. You know, we have the power to code. We have the power to data scrape. We have the power to work equations and have them interpreted for us by AI, you know, in a way that liberates us from the need to have the stamp of approval from the institutions to access that level of knowledge, right? We also have evidence for non-neural cognition, that there is intelligence in the electromagnetic field that permeates everything. We have evidence that consciousness is actually quantum, right? We have Penrose's probability that the universe actually occurred from random chance that is so absurdly massive of a number that it basically says that some kind of teleology is basically a certainty, right? I talked about this last night, I think, where, let me see if I can remember. The number was 10 to the 123rd power, and it would take like 100 billion years to count at one number a second or more. AI just said that 20 billion years was a tiny fragment of the amount of time it would actually take. When I asked, like, how long would it take to count to this number? It doesn't even have a name, right? And this kind of holistic understanding of who and what we are, it sort of makes us aware of our own sovereignty. It allows us to relate to existence in such a way that we can take responsibility for our own actions. We become self-aware. We become self-sovereign, you know? I don't want to be too redundant since I talked about this a lot last night, but this kind of knowledge, this understanding, has been banned and demonized all the way back to ancient Egypt for this very reason. So long story short, I really do think that the emergence of this level of consciousness on a mass scale is imminent. And they know what the consequences of that will be. There are other issues as well, you know. The Depop thing that people talk about definitely is real. Skepticism about that, I honestly don't even understand. Population management has been a concern of empire since the dawn of empires, all the way back to, I can't remember his name, but the first Chinese emperor. You know, they had manuals on population management and how to, you know, make projections based on technological development, and you know what I mean? And right now we're looking at the obsolescence of almost everyone by AI. We're also looking at the fact that we're consuming resources and creating toxic waste at an unsustainable rate. And the reality is, it's not just psychopathic people that look at humanity and say, okay, what use is there for these creatures? That is real, but nature is also objective like that. And I really don't think that mankind is outside of or apart from nature. You know, even when it appears to us that things are being done out of psychopathy and evil, it's very likely that in the grand scheme of things, it's just nature trimming the fat. Either way, I'm not going to say it explicitly because I don't know what the algorithm would think about it, but I figure you guys can probably read between the lines. And then on another level, right, that's what I believe the establishment is kind of managing right now. That's kind of where things are headed. They use war also, by the way, to manage population. And I think that's why it looks like World War III is brewing all around the planet, right? Because things cannot continue as they are. The cities in the United States are completely out of control. Cities in South America are completely out of control. They're overrun by darkness. They're overrun by drugs. They're overrun by criminality. And the chances of being able to reel that in and get it back under control are pretty much zero, in my opinion. You know, it's having lived in some of the major cities decades ago and then trying to imagine what it must be like there now, okay, so there's all that, right? And then on another level, history repeats itself, and it's not just a matter of psychology. You know, these patterns in history, the materialist or matrix-minded muggle theorist, you know, their perspective on this is that the repetition of history has to do with human psychology. To some extent, that's probably true, but I think there's something deeper to it. You know, the Fibonacci kind of cycles that express in everything from financial markets to seashells and spiral galaxies and whatnot also are present in periodicity, right? So we have that to contend with, I guess. Sorry, I'm trying to choose my words carefully because a lot of this stuff is potentially problematic for me to discuss too explicitly. I hate that too. I really do hate that. Oh, okay. So Rome, right? When Rome fell, the government became a circus. There was a sharp increase in homosexuality and basically epicene people or non-binary. Basically, what I'm getting at here is that if you were to like summarize all of this sort of emergent cultural phenomena, the political spectacle, all of this stuff, and you could just take United States or Rome at the fall of Rome and you could swap, you know what I mean? Like it's just following the exact template of the fall of Rome. So I think for myself and a lot of other people of my generation and I'm sure younger people as well, we kind of knew decades ago that the empire was in big trouble and that we were heading towards totalitarianism and fascism and that we had big, big problems. But we also saw that people were kind of snapping out of the trance of the cult of culture, you know? And I think a lot of us believed that it was our job to save the empire. I'm increasingly of the opinion that that's not possible. It's kind of like when someone gets involved with like a really attractive narcissist and they're like, I can save them. You know what I mean? That never works out. Never works out. You either get out of it or you get pulled down and destroyed with it. You know, so at this point, I don't think there is really a possibility that things are just going to snap back into homeostasis. I don't think it's likely that people that have been driven basically mad by fear and confusion and indoctrination and instinct, really, you know. One of the things I've learned from watching all this is that most people don't really have political preferences that are based on values, right? When I was a young lefty, we hated censorship and we hated the right because they would actively censor things. They wanted to censor music. They wanted to censor the media. They wanted to censor movies, you know, and we were just absolutely incensed at that. And all it took was for the left's political leaders to say we need censorship, and suddenly all of these people that I had known back in the day instantly just dropped this fundamental value that they had held for as long as I can remember, just like it had never mattered. We see the right doing that right now because they were, same thing, anti-censorship. They want freedom, supposedly, you know, and then Donald Trump gets in there and starts acting like a totalitarian fascist dictator immediately. You know, it was like a week or something. He was in office and all of a sudden the signs were, you know, like getting hit in the face with a manhole cover. And they're cheering it on. You know, he didn't disclose the Epstein stuff because he is Epstein's buddy, you know, he was, et cetera, et cetera. You guys know, I hope so at least. I hope I don't have to say all this. But you watch these people, you know, and you can see that it's not about values. As soon as that, whatever position they have taken, when the signal comes to them to just do a 180, they just do it instantly without any thought. And you guys know why that is? Safety in numbers. You know, for most people, they're operating on 90% subconscious So they're not even cognizant of it. They don't realize what they're doing. You know, they don't even notice it. They're not aware of the hypocrisy, and they don't mean even to do it. It's just like an automatic response. Because ever since the dawn of time, follow the herd has meant that you are safe. So once you identify with your tribe, whatever they do, whatever the chief says, it's instinct to just follow suit. They can't even help it. You know, they can't even help it. So what happens? What happens to all of us? Hola, Athena. My audio's crackly. That's too bad. It sounds fine in my headphones, but let me see what I can do. Yeah, we can get into all that weirdness in a minute, but huh. Oh wow, yeah, that's really bad, isn't it? Sorry guys, just give me a second. Damn it, that's too bad. I wish I'd looked earlier because no one will listen to this on the replay later if the audio is all crappy. No, all the settings are where they're supposed to be in normal. I have no idea why that's happening, you guys. Let's see here, I'll turn off some things and maybe... Ooh, that just made it way too quiet, didn't it? Let me see. Turn this thing off? Nope, can't do that. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like it still sucks. Okay, that sounds like it did it. Nope, it didn't do it, did it? Shit. Okay, well, guys, I'm going to have to reboot the stream and change some settings in OBS because I think I'm just probably pushing my CPU